Okay, today's rant is going to be short and sweet because I sat down and tried to write something profound to say on this subject. And if you've listened to the program at all, I think we can all agree I am at my best when I am talking from my heart with some basic notes and not when I have things scripted out. So today we're going to talk about class, which is a theme that has been very important on the show recently, but it's been really important in my life, particularly in these last 4 years as I've gone through trauma therapy. So here's why. For years, the anger and shame and embarrassment of being working class drove my interactions in the world. And they were not always great interactions. I had a chip on my shoulder. I was not present in my own life. Everything was combat with me. The world felt very heavy. And I can tell you the first time I remember that being an issue in my life. I lived in a place, Paxton Woods, in a little town, Loveland, Ohio. And when we moved into Paxton Woods, there were about 13 or 14 houses in this thing that was woods. Everybody's house was kind of the same, all that stuff. And when I was about 7 or 8, 9, they basically started knocking down all the trees in the back of the neighborhood. And when they did that, they did a thing called homeorama. I don't know if you guys have anything like that where you're from, but where I'm from, essentially it was developers would go in and build these gigantic houses. And they transformed Paxton South, which is what they called it. Paxton Woods suddenly became Paxton North, and now there was a new thing called Paxton South. All understand, there's like 50 houses. So all these houses are on top of each other, but there's literally a divide in the middle of this place. And all these houses in the back are brand new, and they're huge. They're 5-bedroom, 2-story, full basement, sitting on an acre of land. And Homerama came 2 years in a row. So suddenly this little neighborhood turns into this gigantic place. They also built facilities like pools, tennis courts, all that kind of stuff. And they put locks on them. And the reason they put locks on them is because people who lived in Paxton South could use those, and people that lived in the original Paxton couldn't. So at the age of 7 or 8, without us moving anywhere, without us doing anything, we suddenly became the people that were not allowed to use things in our neighborhood because of who we were and where we lived and all of that stuff. And I remember that. I am still angry about that today. When I tell that story at parties, when I tell that story to people, it has a visceral impact on me. And that was the beginning of many of those things happening throughout my life. Some we talk about today on the show, some you've heard. Everywhere I went, I fought. I fought the world. I fought people. I fought bosses. Everything I saw, I viewed through the lens of that 8-year-old kid who was told that he couldn't use things because of who he was and where he lived. And so when I tell people, look, I understand this white working class rage. I get it. I lived it. 100% understand it. I grew up around it. I have friends that were in it. I have former coaches that lived that life, and I understand it. But the reason I talk so much about class on this program, because it damn near killed me. That anger and rage damn near killed me. It wrecked my life. It ruined every relationship I ever had because I couldn't ever get out of it until I started this trauma therapy, until I found somebody who could help me understand that the rage is real, but there's different ways that you can deal with it, which sounds ridiculous that somebody didn't know that was a thing. And I would like to think that I was nice and empathetic throughout my life because I have friends and people in my life who care about me and all of that kind of stuff. But I didn't have the tools that allowed me to access that in a meaningful way, to do it with purpose. And so I talk a lot about class on this show and even during the interviews because it was been through trauma therapy that I've developed tools to be able to understand that anger and shame and rage and use it not to fuel me fighting the world, but to connect and understand other people's story in a different way without it being filtered through me. And that's something that I know I wasn't able to do purposefully when I was younger. And, when things were going well, I could do that because I would act like a normal, regular human being. But when the trauma flared up, or when I got triggered, I would go back to that 8-year-old kid and, all of that sort of anger and rage and shame and embarrassment would cloud everything. And so it's been really important for me on the show, particularly because I'm a guy and, I roll around in cowboy hats and cowboy boots and got leather jackets and shit like that. It is important that people that look and sound like me talk about this stuff and make space to talk about it, particularly to other guys particularly to other guys that look and sound like me. But I can tell you, I have these conversations with my friends, and my friends are a diverse group of people. Like, men in general have a hard time tapping into those things and using them as a source of strength and not looking at it as a source of weakness. So that was really important for me to call out today because the theme has been developing on the show. You're going to hear it a lot more. You've heard it a little bit already with interviews with like Lily Danziger. But I just wanted to talk about that today because people will tell me, both on the show and off the show, that I'm a good interviewer and that I connect with people and I make them feel comfortable. And we don't really talk about why that is. And I think that it's important because that took a lot of work. Both professionally, it's taken a lot of work, although I'm a bullshitter. So sitting down to interviewing people is like one of my favorite things to do in the whole world. But I also wanted to talk about the emotional labor and work that goes into doing that because it's important. And it's important for men to talk about that. And I got a long way to go. I got a lot of stuff to do. But I really like the fact that I've gotten to where I am right now. I know you don't come here for these rants. I know lots of you skip forward. But it is that work, that purposeful work, to help understand the class, anger, and rage, and all of that stuff, and to use that to power empathy, and to use that as a way to see people and hear their stories and make them feel seen, is just one of the most profoundly happy things that's ever happened in my life.